You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast.
Africa is regarded as the youngest continent in the world. COVID-19 changed the mindset of many Africans, especially the young people. Of course, we know that Africa is the youngest continent today. That is established. So we can leverage on this to build a formidable continent that will be respected for what we bring to the table. I will advise every African youth to leverage the internet and every digital platform that we have out there. We are no longer in the prospecting era. For African economies to develop, youth must be empowered, engaged, and be allowed to take center stage.
Stay tuned as we bring you inspiring people who are unlocking Africa's economic potential. You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast with your host, Tessa Adamu.
Welcome to the Unlocking Africa podcast, where we find brilliant people who are doing brilliant things to unlock Africa's economic potential. Today, we have another special guest, Faith Nwaobia, who is president and founder of Youth Up Global and co-founder of Telemigrants. Welcome to the podcast, Faith. How are you?
Thank you so much, Tessa. I'm doing great. And how are you too?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Another fantastic episode I've been looking forward to. This is something obviously is very close to my heart, something that I'm extremely passionate about, which is the African youth and how we can leverage the energy, enthusiasm, and the skills of African youth to push Africa forward economically, politically, socially, however you want to see it. So yes, I've been looking forward to this conversation.
I'm also very excited to be here, to be invited to this platform, to add my voice to the ongoing discussions on how African youth will be able to be brought to the center stage in terms of inclusion in order to drive the Africa we want. Thank you very much, brother, for having me here.
So before we get going into, the conversation, I was hoping you could introduce yourself, tell us a bit more about Faith and what it is that you're doing at Youth Up Global.
Faith Nwaobia is a Nigerian, is a social entrepreneur, a social analyst, a youth inclusion strategist, an impact leader, and a mentor. Professionally too, I'm a digital selling and B2B growth strategist. I love Africa so much, so I brand myself as a Pan-Africanist, a community builder, because of the work we've been doing with Youth Up Global for the past 2 years. I'm also a global impact speaker. I've been featured in various platforms to add my voice in discussions that pertains to young people and how youth will be able to support the agenda to 2063 of Africa and across the globe. I'm also a preacher of the gospel, a husband, and a father of 3 amazing children. That is Faith Nwaobia in just very short. Thank you very much, Tessa.
Fantastic. So you've given us great insight about the work that you're doing with African youth. And as part of that, you founded Youth Up Global, which is one of the largest youth enterprises and networks globally and in Africa. Can you tell us a bit about the network, why it was set up, and what you aim to achieve through the network?
Yes, thank you very much. Youth Up Global is a fast-growing social enterprise in the business of developing human capital, creating social impactful opportunities, and building empowerment platforms for youth, especially in developing countries. So our constituency are the youth population between the ages of 15 and 45 years. So in executing our mandate, we partner and collaborate with various organizations that are youth-friendly to bring the needed opportunities for youth. Youth Up Global was founded in 2020. It was at the wake of COVID-19. What we wanted to do was to build a community that would help empower youth in developing countries by linking up opportunities through various empowerment programs and collaborative projects. I must be frank with you, we are happy that today we are even doing much more than we were set out to do. Not just that we are connecting social impactful opportunities, we are also creating those opportunities. For instance, through the platform that we are launching called UTDIA, which is an incentivized apprenticeship and volunteering program where young people will volunteer to work and acquire industry-relevant skills. in which case we'll be able to address the problem of skill gap, youth unemployment in Africa, and also to provide economic empowerment for youth. So I would say that the journey so far within the 2 years that we've been on with Youth Hub Global has been amazing, challenging, engaging, and we've used it to put out young people who discover who they are, their potentials, and who are ready to go all in order to build on the structures that we have already laid. So Youth Hub Global is here to support young people, to empower them, and to give them that purpose in order to achieve beyond what they would ordinarily would have done if such support were not made available. So this is what we've been doing with Youth Hub Global for the past 2 years.
It's a brilliant initiative, and thank you. You've given us a great insight into Youth Hub Global's objectives in terms of developing human impact, collaboration, community, and developing opportunities. With that in mind, in terms of the youth of Africa, creating opportunities, developing community, and fostering collaboration, from your perspective, what are the current short and long-term prospects of the youth of Africa?
I would say that there have been opportunities out there and prospects out there, and it is also good that we measure them between the short term and the long term, just as you rightly put it. You would agree with me that the 4.0 industry, as the industry 4.0, has some byproducts.
Yes.
Yeah, one of which is the remote work and the gig economy that it has opened up. Now, there is also another aspect of Africa that is interesting. It is the fact that Africa is regarded as a young continent, in fact, the youngest continent in the world. So what that means is that it offers us an opportunity, African youth have immediate prospects or possibilities to tap into these opportunities to build for tomorrow. So opportunities around remote work, the gig economy, and then the fact that there is a whole lot of talent, there is this talent boom sort of within the African space. So, and a lot of interest, a lot of employers from Europe, America are beginning to get comfortable coming to Africa. Of course, I lead part of Telemigrants as a co-founder, and what we do is to advocate around working opportunities for young people. And I've seen a lot of opportunities that are coming from there. So short-term basis, we could begin to, plug the low-hanging fruits within the remote work, the gig economy, position ourselves on how we can, leverage that for tomorrow. Then long-term, we are looking at the fact that African youth with solid foundation today, on the current prospect that we have, will help the continent experience a boom in human capital development. This is very key. Coupled with the fact that I mentioned that this is the youngest continent. Now, we could build vast human capital, that the world will have to leverage on, to build, to work on anything that they want to do. And you don't want to argue on that because we've seen other people that have done that. So what it means is that, especially as less and less African youth, are beginning to have the COVID-19, one thing that it brought is it changed the mindset of many Africans, especially the young people, to understand that work life and the world of work has changed from you just have to wait until you get to the office and all that before you say, okay, I've got a job. So you can actually sit in the comfort of your house or your home and get engaged, So, and developed countries of America and Europe, like I did say, are becoming a lot more comfortable, coming to Africa, hiring African youths. So we think that if we could maintain this momentum, it will help us address the problem long-term, the problem of brain drain that we have been seeing all the while, because a lot of Africans would want to leave,
yes.
the shores of Africa in search of greener pastures. So that what it means that those greener pastures can actually be accessed right from home, because of course this is now we are in the era of global citizenship, where you are does not limit you to tap into opportunities there. So we would want to see that the future of work that we are going to be seeing in Africa would be such that for young people, would be such that there wouldn't be any need for anyone to say that I do not have access to opportunities. So there will be more access, and opportunities, especially for people who are prepared. Yes.
Thank you, Faith. You've raised some very interesting and valid points in terms of, you talked about Africa being a young continent, short-term and long-term opportunities in Africa, such as the gig economy. And we're also seeing a talent boom in Africa. Whilst in Europe and America, we're also seeing, I guess you can call it, talent shortages. So with talent boom in Africa and talent shortages in Europe and America, how can people or the youth of Africa access and take advantage of some of these opportunities outside of the continent while still remaining on the continent?
Thank you very much. An interesting ask there. I want to say that, yes, for the first time, this is an interesting moment. These are interesting times for African youth. And I will tell you why. For the first time, we are dominating the global talent pool, contributing more than 70% to the pool. This is fact. So it is not been like this right from the beginning because, of course, there were some restrictions. The access to information and trainings were not that available. But today we thank God, and then we thank the fact that a lot of people are beginning to deploy technologies, platforms that are helping. So, of course, we know that Africa is the youngest continent today, and that is established. So we can leverage on this to build a formidable continent that will be respected for what we bring to the table. Let me tell you, China did it.
Yes.
So they leveraged their population to build a strong China, investing in her youth. So if Africa can do the same, Europe, as you did mention, is experiencing talent shortage. Of course, we know that the problem is because they have an aging population. So for me, I see it as a window of opportunity for African youth, as more and more remote job opportunities and gig contracts are opening up. So to assess these opportunities, back to your question specifically, where you say, how do we get to advise young people to advise, how would they be able to access these opportunities? So I will advise every African youth to leverage the internet and every digital platform that we have out there. You see, especially social networking platforms like LinkedIn. A lot of people still do not understand the power of LinkedIn. When I first came in on LinkedIn, I came in to search for a job after I've left the banking. And then I was there on LinkedIn. For me, it was just all about looking for a job. Because while we were in the bank, if you mention LinkedIn, we say, I beg, the normal palettes we use here, I beg, that is please,
yes.
Leave me out. I'm not interested. That is for people looking for job. But then when I got into the space of LinkedIn for the first time, I rediscovered LinkedIn. I usually use the word rediscovered because I came to understand that way beyond the job searching thing that we felt it was much more than that you could build a global network and build what we call social capital and digital footprint within that ecosystem, that it could open a whole lot of opportunities beyond what you would ordinarily imagine. I came for a job. I got several jobs because they were coming as gigs, remote jobs, opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah, so these are areas that young people would need to work on. They need to work on their social networking skills. They need to come on board to leverage platforms like LinkedIn, like I mentioned, which is the biggest professional networking platform to position for opportunities. I also recommend platforms like Upwork for freelance gigs, and then Talentum Africa, for remote jobs, where I'm presently working as business partner Africa for the company.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are areas that we could, young people will easily, jump in to the pool of opportunities that it's not like they are going to look for them; they are there. But the problem is we are no longer in the prospecting era. We are now in positioning era. It is a question of where you position, how you position yourself, not just where you're looking for. No, let those opportunities look for you. And how they can look for you is when you have built what we call a social currency. You build a social capital where people will be able to trace, look at your footprint digitally and know that, okay, you've done this, you've done that. This is an era more of job, it's not of job hunting. Now they're doing talent hunting more of. So you could be headhunted on such platforms. So this is an area that I will advise young people to do. Let them leverage those platforms, especially LinkedIn. And then if you are now with some skill sets, you can move into Upwork and sign up Talent Room Africa and some other platforms that are offering, these opportunities. Yes, this is my advice. This is what my advice would be for African youth, to tap into the opportunities that the gig economy offers and that we are currently experiencing this time.
Thank you, Faith. So you've given some great advice regarding how African youth can access these opportunities by leveraging the internet and online platforms such as LinkedIn. So if we look at it from a different perspective, such as, alternatively, how do companies access the right talent from Africa, and who can help them get access to the right talents if they are facing challenges doing so?
Yes, like I did mention, more like a follow-up to the earlier question. Like I did mention, I said that there are many digital platforms today facilitating both remote and on-site opportunities that African youth can leverage. Okay, so there are platforms that train and hire for foreign companies, okay, while some others only hire. So what it means that there are some platforms today where if you on board, if you register with them, they train you, like the Talent Queue. That is a brand that is called a startup that is a Nigeria-based startup that's called Talent Queue, and they are training and they are recruiting for foreign brands. So what happens that these hiring companies have this partnership with some of these platforms. So what they do is that they come on those platforms and then they get the talent they are looking for, or they even write them, giving them their specification of what they want. So this is not a time to hide, right, for any African youth. This is a time to show up, to build your digital reputation and put yourself out there. So for those organizations, platforms that are training and also help you to hire by linking you up to opportunities. So if anyone is interested in building his or her career or securing a job in this digital age, I've already mentioned it. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, please open a LinkedIn account. A lot of people get hired, in real fact. A lot of people get hired on that platform daily. Even as we speak, someone is getting hired on LinkedIn. That is the truth. And it is not just LinkedIn. It is cut across other platforms. I've mentioned that you could, depending on what your like is, of course, some people like on-site opportunities. Some people would prefer remote work. Some people could do hybrid. What I've seen more is that people have 9 to 5, but then they also have what we call the side gigs. They also have side hustles. So those side hustles are opportunities within the remote space, the gig space. So I will advise, open an account with LinkedIn, get an Upwork account, register with Talentum Africa. Talentum is spelled Talent and EUN. So once you register in such platforms, there are a whole lot of opportunities for Africans, because these are platforms focusing in Africa and helping African youth, to get hired and to put them out there, in the world. That is what I will advise.
Thank you, Faith. And I'd like to add that Faith is not hired by LinkedIn. He's just very passionate about the opportunities.
Yeah. I'm not. When you hear my voice, I don't think I'm a staff of LinkedIn. But I'm just giving you how it was for me and my story, and how LinkedIn also has influenced where I am at the moment. And if it had worked for me, not just only me, I've seen a couple of other people today that I'm discussing with Tessa. We practically met on LinkedIn. I've not met him anywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, I've not met him anywhere else. And today we are doing this together. So you could imagine the power of such platforms. It's not that it's only LinkedIn, but somehow LinkedIn seems to be more professional than most other social networking platforms that we have here. So that's why a lot of professionals prefer to come to LinkedIn to actually look for opportunities and also get people to help them do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from a personal point of view, I'm a huge advocate of LinkedIn. From this podcast, I'd say 90% of the people who I've interviewed, I've made connections with them through LinkedIn. So yes, I agree 100%.
Sure. Maybe LinkedIn should maybe have some kind of credit for for the work. But the guys are doing amazing work, yeah. So we must have to sing their praises, yeah.
Leading on from obviously your great contribution and the information from your last answer, it's obvious that there is a wealth of opportunities available via the internet and platforms such as LinkedIn. I was wondering if we could talk a bit more detail on what type of opportunities are available.
Okay. A lot of people go to LinkedIn to look for jobs. LinkedIn, when it was first created, was a job site where people create their online resume. That was the journey of LinkedIn. Somehow, it has not left a lot of people to think that that's the only thing that happens there. So let's start from the basis. Opportunities that are available on LinkedIn, job opportunities are there. So that's the truth.
Yes.
So that means you could build a career. You could actually decide within the LinkedIn space what kind of job you would love to go in and actually see those jobs there. Not like you come and you don't see. You actually see if you're doing it the right way. But there are different ways people approach these things, and then they don't get the same result because they're not using the same strategy and the same method. So, but if you are using the right strategies on LinkedIn, you would assess job opportunity, that is for sure. And these opportunities can come in different ways. They could come as remote work opportunities. And when we say remote, we mean jobs that you could do from home. Which could be permanent. Those remote jobs. When you hear remote, it's not just the short contract. The short contract are more like the gigs. That's what we call the gigs. The remote jobs opportunities could come as long-term, full-time jobs. Just that you are not working from office. You're just working from home. That's just what makes it remote. Some remote could also be short contracts, depending. So you would have job opportunities which will come as remote opportunities or on-site. That is where you go to, where you actually go to an office or you work from an office space, or a gig. You can sign up different gigs. So someone could throw for you to design a graphics for them, do a voiceover art for them, edit video for them, help them do a website, design a website. Can you code? Will you be able to join my team? We are forming this startup. We're hiring people that will help us. Are you good with UX, UI design? Are you good with project management? Are you good with product management? These are stuffs that you could, a whole lot of opportunities within the digital skills and tech skills. You could see a whole lot, in those space. You could also have an opportunity for upskilling and training opportunities. These are also very key things that you could access from platforms like LinkedIn. Like I said, it's not only on LinkedIn that you have just that most other platforms come to LinkedIn to advertise what they do. That's why LinkedIn is more like having. That is why I'm calling LinkedIn more, because if you come to LinkedIn, you will see Talentroom, or you will see Upwork, you will see other platforms that are into this space. Of course, you will see in the space of training and upskill, you will see Utiva. You will see Utiva, you will see other platforms that also help in upskilling and training. And these are things that are available. You could also see startup incubation or accelerator programs. That is, if you are interested in building a startup or going into the entrepreneurial world, you could see where it is possible for you to start up, learning the basis, of building your own business or growing your own, or scaling up your business, So there are millions of opportunities, that, let me put it that way, that could come from such platforms. In fact, the Industry 4.0 comes with amazing opportunities. And all of these are available within platforms like LinkedIn if you are using them the right way.
Thank you for that, Faith. You've given great in-depth insights with regards to your experience and what you're seeing in terms of the opportunities that are available via the internet to service the talent boom across Africa. So if we focus on the talent boom, is that boom being seen across all socio-economic groups in Africa or just specific groups?
What I would like to say here is that the boom that we have seen so far is not across all socio-economic groups. I think what has happened here is that a part of the African population is yet to feel that impact, right?
Yes.
Is yet to feel that impact. And we must also mention that we keep saying it, that apps and fintech will not solve the problem of Africa.
No.
So we need to go back to the basis, and that is we need to make sure that we up our game in manufacturing, and that comes to our infrastructure, right? We need to invest more on infrastructure and education. But we could actually leverage technology to do so much, because for me, technology is an enabler.
Yes.
So if we can deploy technology, which helps to automate the analog process, we'll be able to see more, one of these opportunities expand into various socio-economic groups, so that it doesn't just have to concentrate on people that have access, to certain level of skill sets, that have access to certain kind of class and maybe network. There are still people out there that are still cut out entirely from what we are doing. And that is why we are preaching more of inclusion, to see that we take this message, we try as much as possible to put it across all the socio-economic groups in Africa. So we are encouraging more funds or funding to be available in other space outside just the regular conventional opportunities. A lot of opportunities are in the informal sector. And
Yes.
unfortunately, that is what is driving, that's the bulk of African economy. And that is why it's as if Africa is not, because I believe that what Africa has is not adequately reported, because the informal sector is not adequately reported because of lack of data, right, and information. So
Yes.
if we could bring the informal sector into the mainstream, right, and have a way to formalize most of the things that happen in the informal sector, it would mean a whole lot for the ordinary man on the streets. So I think that's how we'll be able to make it available. For at the moment, it is not across various. It is not all to all various socio-economic groups in Africa.
You've raised some very interesting points that I've raised in the past, and areas that I agree on in terms of the informal sector and how tech will not solve the problems of Africa, but tech is an enabler.
It's an enabler.
Yes.
It can enable the agri sector. It can enable the health sector. It can help us in mining. It could help us in education. But where you just concentrate on what works for you easily. And that is why we are concerned about fintech, because fintech is an amazing concept that came to simplify our payment system. But at the same time, the whole drive that we have around that space, we should also take it to other sectors to see that we bring them to mainstream, because we know the capacity that agri has, in taking in a whole lot of African youth that are unemployed.
Thank you for that. You've detailed that the talent boom is not being seen across all socio-economic groups. Tech, apps and fintechs will not solve the problems of Africa, as they are enablers. So with that in mind, in terms of how this talent boom isn't seen across all socio-economic groups and the link to unemployment, but from your perspective, how do we address youth unemployment in Africa? What is the most effective way? I know this is a very open question.
Yeah, as open as it is still a very sensitive question. This is because it is one of the major setbacks and threats to the African Economic Growth Agenda 2063.
Yes.
So I remember my interview with the TVC News on their morning show on this very question about...
I've actually watched that.
Thank you. On this same very question about youth unemployment and the issues around it. So I will still retain my answer that I gave that day. Maybe I'll just put some touches around it, but this is just the general thing I did say. So we need to fix our educational system, brother. We just have to fix our educational system. Our curriculum isn't adequate for the current society. So we are over a century older than the curriculum that we are presently using to address present economic problems of societal problems. So that is where the problem is. So what is being taught does not fit in to what is being expected, right in the labor market after graduation. So you now see that graduates would still need to be upskilled or trained or retrained, one form or the other, before they can fit into the system. So we need to emphasize more on skills over certificates. That is the truth. And if we must issue a certificate, it has to be against the skill that is acquired. So we know that this particular certificate is saying that this person has this skill, and not just some form of theories that are dated and irrelevant to solving our immediate problems. So one thing I must also mention in addressing this area, and one way that we can address unemployment is, of course, as you want to close the skill gap, the question is, how do you go about it? In our wisdom within the Youth of Global ecosystem, and as we partner with organizations, we've come up with what we call UTDIA. Permit me to highlight a bit around UTDIA as part of the contribution towards solving and address practical towards solving youth unemployment within this within the discussion. It is that we are helping to address youth unemployment through apprenticeship model. Brilliant. Now, so we understand that the apprenticeship system has worked for Africa before the Westerners came. Yes. The African system that we had was called skill transfer system. In that, if your dad is a carpenter, you become a carpenter.
Yes.
If your mom is a seamstress, you become a seamstress. So it is that way. It goes that way. So we were balanced within that system of education of skill transfer system. But at some point, because of the decolonialization and all the things that followed through, we were now trained to offer ourselves for service of admin and other clerical works. And that's what led to us becoming either account manager this, manager that, this, that, not necessarily with core skills, but just to carry out certain clerical and admin functions. And then from there, we build up curriculums to support that system. But that has failed us, because the number of people coming out of school now outweighs the number of opportunities out there. So we must have to go back to the basis of skill over certificate. What skill do you have? If you have a skill, there is no way you will go hungry. There is no way you will be shouting unemployment, because on your own, you will attract opportunities to yourself. People would give you a job to perform because you've got a skill. So this is an area that UTDIA will play to ensure that through apprenticeship, young people are given opportunities to go learn on the job, acquire industry-relevant skills, and also get paid doing it. We want to support them even as they go through the apprenticeship, because we believe that an internship program you're also contributing to the growth of that organization. So one way or the other, even though the organizations are not able to pay, through a community sharing and contributory model, we are able to support those apprentices during their program as they learn those, train themselves and acquire those skills. So skill acquisition is very key. Remodeling our educational system to be more of skill focus is very paramount. I think these are core things we need to do quickly, in order to address the problem of unemployment in Africa. We need to also do so much within the informal sector. The informal sector, like I did mention, needs to be brought into the mainstream. And the only way you can do that is to make it attractive for them, right? Make it attractive for them. So you find a way. If somebody is a mechanic, the person should be proud to say, I'm a mechanic.
Yes.
So you can imagine if you were a mechanic in Germany and you come here, you begin to supervise our engineers. It's funny, but that is what happens. So you see, because the person is based on skill, not just theories. So when it is time to do the real work, they will show you the real work. But you that have doctorate degree in a particular thing, not to say that I'm talking less of doctorate degree. Of course, I have to respect and honor that. But I'm saying that in real sense, it is not just about holding these papers. It's about the skill that you have attached to those papers. So we need to start emphasizing more on skills by rewarding these people and giving them a space, bringing them to mainstream, begin to give them that recognition that is due to them. So somebody will go with shoulder high and say, what I do is to make sure I'm a shoe builder. I am a clothes builder, a tailor, I'm a this. So you come proud. These are the area, this is the core. It has the 70% of African economy is informal. Just 30, within 30 is what we are hanging around within the formal system. So a whole lot of opportunities are missed there if we leave it without building structures around it. I think the African Continental Free Trade Agreement would also have to work this out within the entrepreneurship agenda for the continent to ensure that outside just the conventional startup funding, that there is funds also available for the informal system, so that these guys that are also in our area market in Aba, which is an international market, is able to access funding to be able to grow their practice. As you are giving the guys billions to do whatever they are doing, setting up and all that, fine and good. These guys that are also building shoes, making clothes, they also need to be supported. I think that would help us address the problem of youth unemployment in Africa.
Great insight. So you stressed the need to fix the education system as it's not adequate or fit for purpose for life outside of education, for employment. You also talk about skill improvement, the African apprenticeship system, and skill transfers. So leading on from that, you coined a phrase which is it youth economics?
Yeah, economies, yeah.
Yeah, which is the economics of youth, is that correct?
Yeah, economics of youth, yeah.
Leading on from that, how important is it for African countries to ensure total youth inclusion for the growth of their economies?
I must first thank you for bringing up that concept with economies in this discussion.
No problem.
Yeah, so I'm a youth inclusion strategist. So I'm always 24/7 thinking around how do we bring youth to the mainstream? How do we bring them, put them as part of decision makers? How do we bring them to the table? How do they participate? How do we engage them? So I believe that no society will rise except the youth are gainfully engaged. That is what I believe.
Yes.
And I also know why I believe that. You follow me in this discussion, we'll understand as I begin to talk about, expand on this. So when you hear workforce or labor force, my brother, what comes to your mind? What I normally think when I hear about labor force, workforce is agility, strength, agility, force, agility, strength. That's what I think about. And within which age bracket will you see agility, force, strength? It is within the age of youth.
Yes.
It is within the period of youth. So for African economies to develop, youth must be empowered, engaged, and be allowed to take center stage. So in trying to gain insight around youth and their involvement, I started reading books. One of my favorite books, is one of my favorite history books is the Bible. So the Christian Holy Book. So I checked the leaders of the old in the Bible. They were all youth when they took up the leadership mantle. David became the king of Israel at the age of 30 years. Joseph became a prime minister in Egypt at the age of 30 years. And you can count more and more. These were young people at their prime, right? So I also, again, did something. I checked the beginning of the government, both in Europe and Africa. And I noticed that the majority of people that made him part did so in their youth.
Very true.
So if a people deny their youth the opportunity to be included in the socio-economic and political decisions, they are only weakening their chances to advance, because that is their best time and at their prime time to make a difference. So for Africa, we have already started reaping the side effects of lack of youth inclusion and poor investment in youth. That is why many people die across the Mediterranean Sea seeking for greener pastures, abroad. So the brain drain effect is so obvious today in the continent. So we need in Africa to enable young people to build, to build prosperous and future that we want by getting them involved. It's one thing to say we want to do this, it's another thing to get it out and implement it. Why youth is important at that period is that they have the stamina, they have the strength, they have the agility and that vigor to move all in carrying out whatever it is that they've said that they would do, especially those that are so conscious of growth. So this is why, so we need to be intentional about this, have an intentional approach to invest in youth. So I recommend that every country in Africa should create a national youth hub. A national youth hub with branches across various states or regions. So this hub will run with PPP, that is private public partnership agreement, where you would have the private sector work with the government to manage this national youth hub. And those national youth hub, what they would do is to see that across all sectors, young people are brought in with formal training, that would equip them and give them skills across all sectors, so that they will be able to release them to go make a difference in the society. This is my recommendation. If the government wants to know about the agenda of the National Youth Hub, I have a strategy and I have my documentation on that. Perhaps when I'm consulted, brother.
Brilliant. I look forward to reading that strategy sometime.
Yes, sure.
So you mentioned about empowering the youth, also quite important teachings from the Bible, and about governments being intentional about youth inclusion to grow African economies. A big part of your work is supporting and advising the youth of Africa about employment and career opportunities. Imagine I'm a young person who has come to you for advice. What tips or insight would you give me that would support me with achieving my goals?
I think this is a very interesting part of the discussion. Of course, you know that this is what I do almost on a daily basis. I will start by saying that every young person should have this intentional desire and hunger to make a difference. Understand that you are here with a purpose, right?
Yes.
And that where you are or where you are born to does not limit your chances of growth. We are out of the era where we would limit ourselves to our immediate environment or the challenges in our immediate environment. I will advise young people to look beyond your immediate environment. Begin to see opportunities just way outside what you could see around you. Leverage the internet. Find out what is happening. Follow the trend or even stay ahead of the trend, like people will say. Young people should engage in productive exercise or assignment or project.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of young people engage in irrelevant things. And at the end of the day, when they've wasted that opportunity of being youth, at some point in life, they start, complaining and start fighting the society in one way or the other. This is not the best approach. The best approach is that as a young person, now is the time. Go all out, get a skill. Every young person today must get a skill. So if you don't have a skill and you will be asking me, what skill do I need? You would say, I didn't go to school. How will I know? You don't need a degree to design graphics this age. Some primary, secondary school students are coding and launching awesome solutions, right? You don't need a degree for your voice to be heard. Get involved. Volunteer also. Learn how to volunteer to be part of something that is bigger than you as a person and be involved in delivering that vision. It is not all the time that we run by our personal vision. We can run with another person's vision. In that course, get our own visions materialized or realized. That is the thing. So I don't know if exactly the answer has been taken care of or there could be something else you would like me to add, but I would say get a skill, leverage the internet, which is the tech, be willing to volunteer, look beyond your immediate environment, and be willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn. We are in a very dynamic world. Things are changing by seconds, by minutes. Be ready to explore and ask questions and be open-minded.
Beautifully put. Thank you, Faith. So yeah, I love what you kind of discussed there in terms of looking outside of your immediate environment, being productive in value-adding activities, gaining skills, and having a vision. I'd like to touch on a point that you discussed before. You previously mentioned that governments have to be intentional about youth inclusion in order to grow African economies. Obviously, this type of activity has to be carried out through, say, government policies to ensure that it is enacted and mobilized correctly. So if we look at some of the policies or some of the activities that are happening in Africa at a large scale, say for instance, AFTA, what benefits will something like AFTA have in terms of improving the future prospects of African youth?
The reason behind the establishment of AFTA is something that is laudable and interesting. I've taken time to read the document establishing this, what they set out to accomplish. Of course, we know that it has to do with encouraging borderless free trade intra-Africa that will ensure great collaboration between youth of the continent and new solutions that will emerge. But I think that for AFTA to do and achieve what it has to do, there are things that they must do. They must have to work with various countries, to streamline trade policies to align with the common African exchange. I would want to see that Africa has a common exchange rate.
Okay, yes.
I do not know why I should be worried about carrying Naira or someone else carrying Ghanaian cedis. And I think we should be able to have a formalized within Africa an exchange rate that is common for all Africa, especially within of course, all of us are all 54 of the 55 countries within the African Union and also a part of the AFTA establishment. So why don't we look at the European Union and look at the model of European Union and pick some ideas to structure what could work for us, not just to copy verbatim anyway. So I shouldn't be carrying visa to enter into any African country. So these are the areas we should start fixing immediately. We need to fix our currency, we need to fix our immigration. Another thing we need to invest heavily on is infrastructure, right? We need to so we need all that. We need exchange rate, streamlining it. We need our immigration. We need to fix it, and we need to do a lot of work in infrastructure investment.
Brilliant. So with that in mind, what benefits do you believe this will provide for African youth in the future?
With all this in mind, I see the future where if all these are done, you would have enabled free movement, you would have enabled free movement of goods and services, exchange of ideas. And I would want to see that maybe you would see more of young people, participating in such decisions or in some programs or projects that ordinarily they didn't have access to. So I would want to see that there will be more, we'll have more liberal, more social, in terms of our social relationship will be more enhanced, expanded. People will have that freedom to move, whether it's their goods or their services, to conduct their normal economic affairs within the continent freely. So it would bring a whole lot of benefits, both economic, both social, political, and otherwise. So I see it as something that would be, and generally it would build a sustainable and a trajectory growth for the Africa Agenda 2063.
Yes, I think it will probably be a big way of stopping the brain drain, so to speak, that we've seen in Africa for many decades.
Yeah, sure, it will.
if people move within Africa instead of moving outside Africa, I think that's a huge positive.
Yes, it will. It will keep a lot of outside the fact that people would have to engage freely. It will move that interest away from moving outside to moving intra.
Yes.
So it would address the blending that we've mentioned, because of course opportunities are there. So why would you want to leave your country or leave the continent when you can access those opportunities home?
Brilliant. So yeah, you beautifully touched upon some points in terms of the potential or the idea of having a single currency, visa requirements, improving infrastructure with regards to AFTA in terms of how can AFTA be successful, bringing benefits to African youth now and in the future. So outside of AFTA, from your perspective, what are some of the political, economic or social trends that you believe are positively shaping, say, the economic development and inclusion of African youth?
So what comes to mind here would be the entrepreneurial spirit that many Africans now possess or exhibit. So as opposed to decades ago, when building such wealth were reserved for the more advanced in age. So more young people are beginning to have this interest. So today, young boys are launching startups that are going into millions of dollars and from the comfort of their homes. So the fact that we are beginning to see some level of acceptance from the government also to allow this tech-enabled platform to operate is a promising development. Yeah, we also know that this is not where we should be. There are also some obvious challenges that the startup ecosystem in many African countries are witnessing. So we also have noticed that another policy action that is also worthy of note is recent realization of some African countries, to invest in agriculture. So some African countries are also beginning to be interested in agriculture because they also understand that it, as we begin to realize that natural resource, depending on natural resource exploitation will not help African economy. It has made us. It's more like what we call in economics a resource curse.
Yes.
So instead of the benefit, we are reaping more of the disadvantage. So I think that realization is key. For instance, in Rwanda, a country that is beginning to get it right, in mostly every other thing now, like we are seeing in the continent, they've recently launched a public-private agricultural partnership that will transform the sector. So this is something that we would need to see in other countries like Nigeria. Also have been able to do few programs around agriculture. So we want to see that we diversify and move across sectors, that would help us, transform and then jumpstart the wheels of African economy into a trajectory growth that all of us will be proud of.
Brilliant. So you touched upon agriculture projects in Rwanda and Nigeria and the startup or tech ecosystem in Africa, which is booming and is enabling a lot of young, talented Africans to launch ventures which are becoming extremely profitable. So if we kind of stick to that theme, what role has technology played in enabling African youth to be more included in the local and global economy?
Technology is an enabler. So it has helped the African youth tap into the global opportunities, that is for sure, that were not available, that were hitherto restricted. And we believe it will keep getting better as more opportunities and platforms like UTOP Global, which I lead, which is an opportunity aggregator for young people that connects opportunities from various organizations that are into various youth-focused projects, and then creating social impactful opportunities and linking up all that. For me, I think that one thing that technology has done for African youth, both at the local and the global, is the fact that it has enabled us to have to join what we had no access before. We've joined the global talent pool, So that alone has given us an opportunity to assess same opportunities as they come, So the access of information is now broadened, courtesy of technology. And it has also helped in all phases it's also helping in major sectors, like we did mention, fintech, for instance, that's the financial technology, is doing fantastically well in Africa. And some other platforms, like with technology, we now have agri-tech, right? With technology, we now have edutech. With technology, we now have health tech. So everything now has the tech part of it.
Yes.
so of course, so it will get better by the day. So tech is taking over, and that is the beauty of Industry 4.0. Yes.
Fantastic. I love that answer. So, you kind of touched upon some very current and important points there in terms of the importance of tech, how tech has integrated itself into all parts of African society, from fintech, edtech, health tech, agri-tech.
anything that perhaps even in the HR now,
HR tech.
I see some people write me now and they say we are building tech around HR. You subscribe to our platform, we'll be able to manage all your HR needs. That's the tech in the HR. Things that you could do manually, all that, even in accounting, anything that you are doing now, technology is there to enable you perform better.
100%. And as we said, tech is an enabler. So it makes activities or tasks which were time consuming, you can now automate, and that
simplifies them.
Yeah, simplifies. And that is where you create more value over time as well. And that is the state of the world as it is. And I guess that's the future of Africa. So with that in mind, talking about innovative technology, current trends, the future trends, future of Africa. Where do you see Africa in 5 years' time from the perspective of social, political, and economic inclusion of the youth of Africa?
We will see more liberal and accessible young people in Africa to the world. So young people will be more accessible and easily spotted. We could easily showcase ourselves to the world because the technology is already there. The platforms are already there to showcase us the more. So these opportunities would be opening up socially. It will be easy for us to get out there in the world and display. Politically, it will also help more young people to come into the mainstream of politics, to take the center stage. And it will also enable, we are going to see more accountability, within the polity in Africa, because there will be less and less secrecy within the system as technology comes in. So everything would ordinarily be made known and in the public domain. So it will be very difficult for you to hide certain things, in the coming years. So in 5 years' time, I want to see that it will be very difficult. In fact, you need to be very intelligent before you can steal and cover it in Africa. As it were, things will change for the best for our polity. So economically, youth will be more able to access, will be able to access more opportunities with the aid of technology as it is. And you will see more youth-centric organizations that are keen towards outside just the profit-oriented part. They are also interested in impact, social impact. So you will see that kind of relationship as you move on, both at local, national, and international, and you will see more people wanting to support youth agenda and youth inclusion, and youth empowerment programs. So that's what I will see, in the next 5 years for African youth, cut across social, political, and economic.
Thank you for that, Faith. So you've given a great view in terms of how you see African youth being more socially, politically, and economically included in African society in the next 5 years' time. So if we look closer to home, where do you see yourself and the work that you're doing in 5 years' time?
Yeah, thank you very much. Now you're bringing it to personal, home. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody wants to talk about themselves, where they want to be, this, that. It's as if when you're talking about it, it's just happening, and that's the power of self confidence and self proclamation.
Yes.
So I see myself to have empowered at least 5 million African youth, directly or indirectly, to gain industry relevant skills, secure decent jobs, and be more economically empowered, leveraging youth of global. So 5 million, I say directly and indirectly. Maybe directly I could do maybe 100,000 or 200,000 directly, and then other people indirectly, because of course, as we begin to shoot out different programs, empowerment programs from my community, both on Youth of Global or Telemigrants, and all the people that I affiliate with, and even you and the Cronet blockchain technology that I just signed up to join their board, and other stuff that we are doing, and Ifo 3D that I'm also serving in their board that is also into sustainable environmental programs for African youth. So there are a whole lot of angle that I could come from. We just have to be firing from different cylinders to ensure that we are able to deliver. But this is what I see myself doing. I want to be proud to see that 5 million African youth, whether from direct job work that I've done or indirectly from activities linking up to what I've done, are able to get empowered, get skilled, get decent jobs, and in that case, get economically empowered.
You've given a great vision of, how you aim or will empower 5 million African youth personally and through Youth Up Global.
Directly, I indirectly do 1 million.
Yes.
To be able to do 5 million.
Now that's brilliant. And to be honest, with what I've seen that you've done so far, the great work and impact and the reach that Youth Up Global has achieved through its short period of time, I think in 5 years' time, you'd achieve 5 million or even more, no problem.
Thank you, and I appreciate for having that faith with me.
Quote of the week.
One feature which I've kept as part of the podcast is this part, which is, as people, we often have quotes, mantras, African proverbs or affirmations that keep us going when times are good or when times are challenging. Do you have one that you can share with us today?
Yeah, I do.
Brilliant.
I do. Brother, in everything I do, I always go with this Ubuntu philosophy.
Oh, brilliant.
I am because you are. So it has an Igbo language version. It's called Onye Ahala Nwanne Ya. The Onye Ahala Nwanne Ya means hold your brother's hand as you go.
Beautiful.
Hold your brother's hand as you go. So that is I am because you are, in our own balance here. So for me, I believe in working together. I believe in unity. I believe in strength in unity. I believe that teamwork is the best. That is why in everything I write, mostly when I want to end up anything I write, I will always say together is better. So if you followed some of my content or what, you would see me mentioning it from time to time. Together is better summarizes that philosophy of I am because you are. Onye ahala nwanne ya, hold your brother's hand as you go. So I believe in collective shared prosperity instead of individualistic approach. So I believe in working together instead of running individually because we are better together.
Perfect. I've got nothing to add to that. That was perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Faith. So as we're coming to the end of the conversation, do you have any closing remarks and final calls to action?
Yeah, I do. I must have to first and foremost start by thanking you for this awesome opportunity to appear in your show. We've done almost 2 hours or so.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
I'm so excited even to continue, right? I'm still energized even to do more.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's been engaging, discussing what affects us as young people. In Youth Up Global, we have our band between 15 and 45 years because we know that a lot of African youth have issues to start on time. So before they would even realize it, they were 40 already. And they are still trying to stand, they're still trying to find their feet. So we extended to 45 in our bracket of youth definition so that we can carry everyone along. So this is what concerns us as a people. So my closing remark is, thank you so much for this amazing opportunity to be in your show. And I also want to appreciate the ETK Global community for their continuous support. These are selfless group of people that have been doing a whole lot, to impact, to make a difference. Coming from different background, we have today across 14 African countries and 2 Asian countries, across 5 regions: East Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, West Africa, and South Asia. These are all where we are represented within the community, and everybody work together with that same spirit of Ubuntu. I am because you are. And I want to also say a big thanks to the Talent Tune community, where I am the business partner for Africa. I also want to thank the Telemigrants community, where I'm co-founding this movement that is advocating teleworking opportunities for Africans, whether they are in their homes or in diaspora or refugees, wherever they are. We're advocating for them to have access to opportunities through a teleworking system. I'm also grateful to the LinkedIn community generally, because I always mention LinkedIn community because they are the people that have also supported my growth, and they've given me that platform, to, of course, without my community, maybe perhaps supporting me and all that, you may not have noticed me in the first place. Of course, to have me invited to be part of this show. So it's still part of the people that help me and support me to be out there. So for me, I would say in everything, let's continue to do our best, because I believe that together we'll all make a difference.
Amen to that, Faith.
Amen.
That has been an extremely refreshing, inspiring, and uplifting conversation. One that has been packed full of important insights, lessons, and teachings. And you've raised some extremely important discussion points. So thank you, Faith. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us some of your time and sharing your knowledge. So yes, it's a pleasure speaking to you. And thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. Keep making a difference.
You too.
Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly.
Thank you to everyone who has listened and stayed tuned to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, or tell a friend about it. You can also rate, review us in Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcast. Thank you, and see you next week for the Unlocking Africa podcast.